My method for picking the topics of my trinities often comes from me playing a new game and being blown away by a feature in it. This time, that game was Dead Space and its impressive interface. I couldn't believe I had never heard anyone talk about this HUD. Sure, I saw discussions about how the necromorphs can attack from any hole in the ceiling, wall, or floor, and that you were never truly safe, but I hadn't heard how that extends into the UI. UI can have a considerable impact on the player if it's diegetic or built into the game itself, ergo Metroid Prime. Dead Space also incorporates realism into its menus, as it's holographically projected to Isaac's side. Opening this menu doesn't pause the game, leaving you open to attack at all times, even in a place you're supposed to feel safe. Sometimes when I panic in a horror game, I'll open the menu to catch my breath. More than once in Dead Space, these reflexes lead to me losing my health, or most often dying. The best thing a horror game can do is to betray your senses, like how Dead Space will emphasize aiming for the limbs when most Resident Evil veterans will try and go for the headshot. The menu system benefits the story by adding to the game's atmosphere by expanding on what Isaac's suit can do, further complementing the game's sci-fi genre. The menu also gives the double effect of including the second genre, survival horror. Instead of the narrative, it helps with the gameplay, constantly heightening the tension every time you need to check the map when you enter a new area. Dead Space took everything I knew about a traditional menu and ditches it, favouring its creative world-building techniques. Things like inventory and maps are just a button away, and they put all of the vital things you would need to know into the ship and suit itself. I'm gonna talk about my favourite thing this game does, the ingenious inclusion of the health meter. Isaac's health is shown by how full the spinal column on his suit is. While this is shown as just a meter, my headcanon is that his suit is filled with some healing liquid to keep him alive as he's attacked. As the suit drains this gel, Isaac becomes weaker and struggles to fight through the pain inflicted by the necromorphs. That's the story benefit of the health spine, and like the holographic menus, it also has a gameplay purpose. An apparent reason is immersion, as to not break the tense atmosphere with a health bar at the top of the screen. And of course the health bar has to be on screen. No one wants to open a menu to see their health, no matter how fantastic that menu may be. The reason it's put on the spine is so the player's gaze is never drawn away from what's essential to survive, Isaac's position. Because the necromorphs can appear from anywhere, they often jump down from behind you, which is why Isaac must remain in a corner. The secondary gameplay purpose would be to judge how far away an enemy is from grabbing you, allowing the player to make spur-of-the-moment decisions, and looking up at a health meter can be a crucial part of deciding the best course of action. I would say that the genre where the menu is the most important is turn-based RPGs, because most of your time spent playing those games will be navigating the menus. So when I see what might as well be the opposite of a turn-based RPG, that being third-person survival horror, that puts so much effort into its UI, it proves to me just how vital a HUD can be. Dead Space is the best menu design I have ever seen outside of an RPG, with gameplay and narrative purpose alongside sleek design with satisfying sound effects. This game is my new gold standard. Immersion is a tricky thing to achieve in video games. The best and most obvious way to immerse a player in a world is to make them see it through the protagonist's eyes, but games like Call of Duty and Halo don't choose the first person for immersive reasons, instead they choose it for gameplay reasons. However, Metroid Prime took video game immersion to another level. Metroid Prime did something that if other games tried today, no one would bat an eye. Yet in 2002, it was so unheard of that it might as well have been extraterrestrial. Some people who might have played Metroid Prime for the first time on the Wii might have no idea what I'm talking about. Those who experienced this on the GameCube know precisely what I'm rambling about. The UI. Okay, so that's probably what you thought I meant considering the title of the Trinity. What I mean is the way that the UI is presented to the player. it's presented in the same way it's delivered to Samus herself. Everything short of the entire game map can all be accessed without pausing. Beam types, visor mode, missile ammo, energy, and a minimap. The best part about this isn't the functionality, it's the fact that it's one-to-one what Samus sees through her visor. Not like other first-person shooters where the reticle and ammo count are there just for gameplay reasons. Everything on the HUD is exactly what Samus would see while monitoring her suit and exploring Talon 4. What I especially love about this is the holographic approach Retro Studios took when designing the display. As the dimensions shifted from Super Metroid to Prime, the UI took on more of a 3D effect. The map screen looks like Retro Studios directly pulled it from the Star Wars films and hologram displays, and when it came time to making a 3D Star Wars Metroidvania with Jedi Fallen Order, they ended up pulling directly from Metroid Prime, making the cycle complete. A small detail that's not easy to notice when you're first playing is that, similar to the helmet's visor, which is rounded and curved around the face, the HUD screen is also wrapped. Notice how the icons on the bottom left aren't flat or facing directly towards the camera. Instead, they're holographic and curved, exactly what Samus has seen. Even the top and bottom of the screen serve no purpose except to show the inside of the helmet. That's how much Retro was willing to sacrifice for immersion. Literal dead screen space, all to make you feel like you're the one in the power suit. Metroid Prime is also in the vein of modern titles like Red Dead Redemption 2, where the developers introduce mechanics not for players to enjoy, instead they create game features for what the character might need. So for example, you might unlock the thermal or X-ray visor and think, this ruins the art style and graphics of the game, and it makes me feel nauseous during these high-speed boss fights. I look at it like Retro Studios didn't do that for the player's enjoyment, because the imaginary player is correct. It does waste their hard work and effort designing those environments and enemies. Instead, they implemented it because it's what Samus would need to complete her mission, yet another noble sacrifice in the name of immersion. Do you want to know the real kicker? The one that, to me, is such a minor detail, yet it still floors me when I see it. During battle with the flying space pirate enemies, they'll fire a missile, and when it explodes, it creates the perfect lighting conditions where you can see the reflection of Samus's eyes in the visor. Again, that is such a small detail that goes a lot further than anyone else is willing to go today. I genuinely put Metroid Prime right up there with Red Dead 2 in the category of realism, which is a peculiar thing to hear about a game starring a sci-fi bounty hunter. I've spoken a lot about user interfaces within the worlds of games, or diegetic UI for short. It's becoming much more commonplace in recent years with games like Metro 2033 and Fallout 4. The last two entries to the Trinity relied on science fiction suits, giving the developers much more leeway to be creative with how their menu looked. But it's awe-inspiring when a game set in the real world manages to do it so excellently. That game is Firewatch. One of my writing rules is no context without critique, so I can only explain something to you if I have something to say about it. Otherwise, I'd prefer you play the game before watching, but I'll give myself 50 words including this setup, since this is an indie game. You play as Henry, who watches out for fires in a national park and performs tasks at the behest of his boss Delilah via walkie-talkie. 3 words left, and they're gone. Now I'm over. Since most of this game is spent wandering around a beautifully lit forest from a first-person perspective alone, eeriness and isolation become themes of the game. Perhaps unintentionally, as you do frequently speak with Delilah, therefore the developers never want to give you the feeling of isolation by giving you constant dialogue. But that's just the beautiful thing about themes and all art. It's all subjective. So, to enhance the solitude, and yes, I'll repeat it, immerse yourself in the world, the developers Campo Santo decided to strip away all forms of traditional HUD and replace it with an in-game interface. I mentioned in my opening that I was impressed that it was set in the real world and still ended up in this category, yet as I write this, I remember that the game is set in the 80s because it would probably be replaced by a simple smartphone if it were modern. Instead, as you've most likely seen in the video, the map of this game is a literal paper map, and you navigate the world by using an accurate compass. The main character, Henry, will move as if he was reading a map while you are holding out your parchment. He'll move slowly while still looking at the map, giving you a sense of what direction you're wandering, while allowing him not to trip over as if this was real life. Campo Santo also decided to do away with waypoints, adopting a similar strategy seen in the Elder Scrolls III Morrowind. Instead, its signpost system guides its players around Shoshone National Park. Even though the game is short, you soon start to recognize landmarks, and sadly start using their creative sketching less and less. As you explore more and more, Henry will start writing personal memos and routes on the map, so you don't get lost, and helps commit more of the area to memory, a technique adopted by Naughty Dog while developing specific areas in The Last of Us Part 2. Quite a lofty achievement for a development team of 12 people who were then acquired by Valve 2 years later. This added artistry from Henry onto the map also further reveals his character and profession as he familiarizes himself with his surroundings in order to preserve them. After I completed this essay, I learned that Far Cry 2 also used the mechanic of the main character holding up a map as a means of navigation. While I haven't played Far Cry 2, I did watch some gameplay online to observe the differences. While I may have to remove some points for originality, in Far Cry 2, it seems to be a feature, while in Firewatch, it's tonal and atmospheric to the game world. The map of Firewatch is there to set the mood for the player. Henry's map helps you understand the bright, lush forests these developers made to welcome us into their warmly built park. It solidified me as a player into this game, and it goes well beyond a feature in this game, as it did in Far Cry. While a diegetic interface is nothing new, it's never been done more accurately or ingeniously in a pre-modern setting as Firewatch.